Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 21st of April, 2023. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So first off, a bit of regulation or regulatory news, related news here. So we have a fresh blog post out of the Paradigm Legal Research team here, titled "The Current SEC Disclosure Framework is Unfit for Crypto." Now, this is pretty long. I don't know if it's incorporating some of the other posts that they have done. Oh yeah, no, that it is. It's basically part 3, and I've highlighted their blog post before. It's part 3 of a 3-part series here, where you can read part 1 and 2, and I've highlighted those on the refuel, discussing as I mentioned, the SEC's disclosure framework being unfit for crypto. Now, I've talked a lot about this over the last few days, especially in the wake of the hearing with Gary Gensler, and I've spoken about it on the refuel in the months prior as well. And I think that's pretty obvious at this stage that it's near impossible, if not impossible. I mean, I think it is pretty much impossible at this stage for crypto projects in the US to be able to actually go to the SEC and get any kind of guidance on anything, really, at the end of the day, which is obviously very, very sad and not very progressive of the regulatory regime in the US here. So just wanted to highlight this post for you guys to go check out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. And as I said, there is part 1 and 2 here to read as well. If you were going to read anything about this sort of stuff from anyone, I would say that Paradigm's policy team is probably some of the best to read, because Paradigm is obviously one of the biggest VCs in crypto. They've been around for quite a while. They have a rather large legal team, I believe, or policy team, I believe, and they are definitely very acute of everything going on here, or acutely aware, I should say, of everything going on here, because they have a lot of portfolio projects that are based in the US that are dealing with these things on a day-to-day basis. I mean, one of Paradigm's founders is the co-founder of Coinbase, Fred Ursum, who obviously would still have a close relationship with Brian Armstrong. I'm sure they talk about these things all the time. So if anyone is going to know what the current framework looks like, or what the current kind of environment looks like, and who can speak to it best, it's definitely the Paradigm folks. So go read this. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. Now, speaking about Brian Armstrong, he's been sharing a bunch of pictures of him meeting with different members of, I guess, Congress in the US, members of Parliament in the UK, and other regulators and politicians. And it's really great to see him continuing to do this. Now, I've highlighted him doing this before on the refill, maybe a few weeks ago, but he's really ramped up his efforts, and I think it's because he knows that there needs to be someone, whether it be an individual or a company or both, out there fighting for crypto on the crypto side of things. Obviously, there are various politicians within the US Senate and other governments around the world that have pro-crypto or anti-crypto stances, but at the end of the day, the anti-crypto crowd can be turned into pro-crypto people. I don't think that I don't think the majority is like forever anti-crypto. I think there are certain politicians out there that are definitely anti-crypto and will never change their mind. I think people like Elizabeth Warren fall into that bucket, right? But not everyone's like her. Not everyone is on the extreme side of things. Actually, contrary to popular belief and popular narratives, most people are in the middle, right? Most people get dragged into the extremes by the extremists, but they generally sit around the middle on most things and can be reasoned with a lot of the time. So that's exactly what I believe Brian Armstrong and people around his inner circle are trying to do. They're trying to talk to these politicians, trying to talk to these regulators, and basically tell them why crypto is the future, why crypto as an industry shouldn't be banned or heavily regulated, should be allowed to flourish, why the innovation that's happening within the crypto space is good for the world, basically, not just the US but the world. But specifically with the US, it's good for jobs in the US, for the US economy. It's good for spurring on growth, and it's good for things like USD dominance, because a lot of the stable coins in crypto, pretty much the vast majority, are USD based, and all the other kind of benefits there, DeFi, I mean, everything, right? And I'm sure that's exactly what Brian is trying to educate these people on. Now, of course, there are some politicians that would already be aware of all of this, and they have their own stance, whether it be anti or pro crypto. But I honestly think that if a politician, or really anyone, has actually been educated on crypto properly, and I'm not talking about educated on one part of crypto or one chain in crypto, I'm talking about crypto as more of a a broad thing here. If they had been educated properly on it, I do believe that they would end up being not necessarily pro crypto. Like, you don't have to be pro crypto to be to be kind of like pro innovation, right? So I think that they would kind of, even if they're neutral on it, they could be like, well, I'm neutral on this thing. I don't know if it's good or bad. And maybe they don't even care if it's good or bad, right? Maybe it's just not something they want to focus their time on. But at the same time, they are happy to let it kind of just play out and let the ecosystem play out on its own merit, rather than trying to stranglehold it or ban it, rather than not giving clarity on things. So they don't have to have a pro crypto stance. Not everyone has to be pro or anti crypto. There is a middle ground here. There is a neutral stance that people can take, and you can find some parts of crypto interesting. You can find other parts of crypto abhorrent. I mean, that's what we're like when we're looking at the crypto ecosystem. There's a lot of crypto that I don't like and I think is just absolutely disgusting. I mean, all the scams is the obvious thing here, but even the things that look like legitimate projects that turn out to not necessarily be scams, but be really kind of bad for the ecosystem, like for example, Terra, right? I don't know if I don't think Terra was a scam, to be honest, like not in the kind of like traditional meaning of the word. I don't really think it was a grift, but I think, and I don't think it started off like that, but I think what happened, not to harp too much on about it, but I think what happened is that it grew really fast, it grew really quickly, and it attracted a certain crowd, and then the underlying mechanism obviously wasn't going to hold and wasn't going to be sustainable, and then it all fell apart. But the funny thing is, Terra fell apart based on its own merit. It's not like a government banned Terra and then it just fell apart because of that. No, Terra was able to play out in the free market. Yes, it wrecked a lot of people, right? But it played out exactly as it would have, regardless of any other variable. It played out like it was designed to play out at the end of the day. But in the wake of that, obviously, in the wake of FTX as well, there's a lot of questions around regulation and that sort of stuff. So, and a lot of the headlines are basically painting all of crypto as a massive grift, a massive scam, all that. So basically, what Brian and other people like him are trying to do is move the needle back, because it's a spectrum, right? As I was saying, there is anti and pro crypto, and then there is on either side, and then there is neutral in the middle. If we can get everyone into, or most people to the neutral part, then that is a huge win. Like, there are obviously people on the anti crypto side that can be brought over, and even people on the really kind of like pro crypto side. Maybe they were on pro crypto a year ago, but now they've shifted to anti crypto. We can get them back to at least neutral. We don't have to get them back to being pro crypto, but we can get them back to neutral. And that's how these things move forward. I mean, I've said before that I try not to be, left or right on the political spectrum. I try to be centrist, or as centrist as I can be. And I mean, politics is very nuanced. People's views are very nuanced, and I don't. And I'm pretty happy that I live in a place where we have ranked choice voting, so I don't have a binary decision. I can actually have more options than just two options. But unfortunately, in the US, a lot of it is dominated by kind of this left-right politics, right? This tribalism, this partisan politics. But that is at, I guess, like the leadership, the highest levels within the government itself, within Congress itself. There's obviously thousands of people that have differing views on things, and I think that if we can win a lot of them over, and then we can obviously push more progressive policies forward for crypto. So kudos to Brian for leading the charge here in the US and other places around the world. Hopefully, as time goes on, more and more positive stuff comes out of, especially the US, around crypto. All right, so the location for Devconnect has been announced. So you remember that Devconnect was first hosted last year in Amsterdam. I attended. I met a fair few of you there. It was really, really fun. I loved Amsterdam, beautiful city. I remember saying that I wasn't a huge fan of the way Devconnect is kind of run with the multiple venues. I don't know, that's like a pet peeve of mine. I think that a lot of people enjoyed the multiple venues, and that's totally fine. But for me, it was more that it was just very hard to catch up with people, because you'd be like, hey, where are you? And they'd be on the other side of the city because you're at one venue and they're at another. Whereas with something like with ETH Denver, there was just like the one main venue. So most of the time, everyone would be in the same spot. I know that there was a main venue for Devconnect as well, where there was the hackathon venue where all the hackers were, but people were generally pretty fragmented. But in saying that, it was cool. It was cool to be able to walk around Amsterdam and not be kind of tied down to one particular spot. But yeah, I generally prefer like the one spot conferences in that regard. But on that note, back to the Devconnect that's happening this year in Istanbul. It's going to be from the 13th to the 19th of November. So basically, closing out the year, almost at the end of the year there, and you can read the blog post for full details on this as well as this tweet thread. Now, I'm undecided if I'm going to go to this personally. I would say I'm 50-50 at this point. It's basically, there's a number of different reasons why. One of them is definitely the fact that I honestly don't enjoy Devconnect, the multiple venues, as much as I enjoy the single venues. There's also the travel time for me. But given this is a week-long conference, I can probably make that work. The travel time is 25 to 30 hours at least to get there. I've never been there, so that's a huge plus. That's a huge pro. Like, I'd love to go to Istanbul. I've never been to Turkey at all. I'd love to, and obviously Istanbul is one of the main attractions there, so I'd love to go there and experience the city. I know that there's going to be a lot of people there that I know, a lot of my friends there, so another pro, but we'll have to see. I'll have to see if I make it work there. But if I do go, I may try to do another Daily Gwei meetup there. As I've said before, I don't know any other conferences I'll be going to this year besides this, but any ones that I go to, I will try to do a Daily Gwei meetup. But yeah, I'll let you guys know about that. But as I said, you can go read the blog post for full details on this and kind of links to other resources as well for you to check out. All right, so Flashbots has launched their MEV-Share beta on Ethereum mainnet. Now, this is very similar to some other products that already exist out there, where it's essentially allowing users to get a kickback in the MEV that's extracted from them. So there's a TLDR on what this is here at the top of the announcement posts. The first line is users should decide how, when, and by who their transactions are executed. This enables them to internalize their MEV and be included on-chain faster. Flashbots has launched MEV-Share in beta with trusted order flow sharing to give users more control and bargaining power in the MEV supply chain. So it's basically changing the power dynamics here so that users have more of a say in what happens with the MEV that's extracted from them. Obviously, a lot of users would love that MEV to flow back to them when they do a transaction. And as I've said, there are other solutions that are already doing this, but Flashbots, being the creators of MEV Boost, being the one of the biggest, if not the biggest players in the MEV space across all kind of domains here, it's definitely worth paying attention to what they've launched with MEV-Share here. So there are a bunch of different diagrams of showing how this works and information in the post for you to go check out. But I think this is really great. I think, like, okay, so I've talked about this a lot before, but a lot of the MEV research and development is focused on removing as much of the toxic externalities of MEV as possible. So one of these is sandwich attacks. That's one of the biggest toxic externalities of MEV that is still prevalent to this day, and it leads to a lot of users getting wrecked when they didn't have to get wrecked, and a lot of MEV bots profiting from the users getting wrecked, and it's very negative. Other negative externalities include censorship on the network, which we've dealt with, and we've gotten that down since the OFAC sanctions happened, which is obviously really great. Centralization of block building, which, I mean, it's still pretty centralized. We don't have that many relayers. So obviously, decentralizing that is another negative externality that we would love to eliminate there. And all of this obviously informs PBS designs and things like that as well. But another way we can do it is by sharing the MEV back to the user that gets extracted from them. It's kind of like, it sometimes reminds me of if someone was to pickpocket you, right, and say they stole like $50 from you, but then they're like, oh, you know what, I'm going to return some of this value back to this person because I'm not going to take it on. I'm going to be a fair pickpocket, so to speak. So they give you back like half of it, right? And they take $25 for themselves. Well, they still get their $25, and you still get your and you have $25 as well. But I mean, at the end of the day, it was your money to begin with, right? And that's what a lot of MEV looks like, where it's taking money that was yours to begin with that shouldn't have been taken from you. I'm not talking about normal MEV and normal kind of things that arise from like arbitrage and stuff like that. I'm talking about toxic MEV, like sandwich attacks, right? That sort of stuff is pretty bad, pretty toxic, and it can lead to a lot of losses for users, and losses that they didn't even know that they could avoid, right? So I think that's what schemes like MEV-Share and others try to do, is try to basically just put it more back in favor of the user here. So definitely something that you should check out. You can go check it out. I'm pretty sure you just have to point to their RPC to do this or something. I saw that somewhere. Yeah, Flashbots protect RPC. That's what you have to do to add to your wallet to receive MEV kickbacks and faster inclusion. And you can customize your request to share with additional builders. So that's linked in the blog post here for you to check out, which will, of course, be linked in the YouTube description below. All right, so I talked about the Magi client yesterday that was built for OP Stack by A16Z. Well, it seems another client has been built for the OP Stack called OP-Erigon, and this was built by the Test in Prod team. So they've leveraged OP Stack's modular and open source design to build OP-Erigon, an alternative execution client for the OP Stack here. So this now means OP Stack has 3 clients. This is crazy. I mean, and back to back, right? I'm sure they probably planned the announcements back to back here, but still, OP Stack now has 3 clients that it can run on. I mean, I don't believe that Maggie or Magi or whatever and OP-Erigon are live just yet, or live on mainnet just yet for OP Stack. They're in testing phase, but this is amazing, guys. Like, this is proper client diversity. 2 clients is great. 3 clients is even better, right? It's like that famous scene in The Social Network. $1 million is cool, but $1 billion is cooler, right? Well, 2 clients are cool, 3 clients are cooler. Maybe we get to like 4 or 5, like we have on mainnet Ethereum, right? Just crazy awesome to see the client diversity happening here. And as I said yesterday, this is not limited to OP Stack. I'm sure the other L2s are definitely working on this sorts of stuff as well. But just great to see another client introduced here and announced here for the OP Stack, which is called OP-Erigon, which I believe is based on. Oh no, it's a fork of Erigon, I believe, or a fork diff, I should say, that's been modified to suit the OP Stack architecture. So you can check out the announcement blog post for yourself. If you want to hear my extended takes on why this is really cool for Optimism or OP Stack generally, listen to yesterday's episode where I talked about the Magi clients. I'm going to keep saying it I'm going to keep pronouncing the word in different ways because I've had multiple people tell me different ways to pronounce it. So whatever, but you can go check out that. It'll be in yesterday's episode and timestamped for you to do so. All right, so Ryan Berkmans here shared a tweet saying that the French bank Société Générale launched a euro stablecoin on Ethereum with the ticker EURCV. And then he says, I believe this is the first stablecoin launched by a bank on public Ethereum, but it certainly won't be the last. And then he links to the contract and to the press release here, I believe. Now, I saw a bunch of tweets around this, bunch of tweet threads around this. This is cool, but I think it's worth noting that this stablecoin is incredibly centralized, and it's more centralized than the existing centralized stablecoins, which is kind of funny when you think about it. I believe there's a function in the contract that allows the the issuer, obviously in this case being the Société Générale here, to steal everyone's money, to steal all of the stablecoins. And there are other functions in there that make no sense from like a smart contract perspective, where it's very gas inefficient. And I saw threads about this. I don't have them handy, but yeah, it's not the best designed thing. It is incredibly centralized. But what's really cool about this is that a bank has decided to essentially tokenize a kind of stablecoin on Ethereum. So it's basically feeding into the Ethereum as a settlement network thesis that I've been talking about for a while on the Refuel. Now, Ryan also has a second tweet here where he said, where he follows up by saying, correction, Société Générale is not the first bank to do this. NAB, the National Australia Bank, would be claims to be the second, but he's unsure of the first. So yeah, I remember covering the AUDN that was launched by NAB. I don't know what's happening with that, but that was launched as well. But the reason why these things are so exciting, they're obviously not exciting that they're super centralized, right? It's not exciting to see another centralized stablecoin. But what is exciting, as I said, is seeing the TradFi institutions, these big TradFi institutions, playing with public Ethereum mainnet and bridging TradFi and DeFi together. Now, as I said just before, this plays into the Ethereum as a settlement layer thesis. This plays into Ethereum as the backbone of the new financial system thesis, and this is like a vote of confidence from these big institutions that they see value in launching these things on Ethereum. Now, of course, a lot of these things aren't going to go anywhere. A lot of them will be rebuilt, re-architected. A lot of them may not even end up on Ethereum layer 1. They may just be done on Ethereum layer 2. Or maybe some of them end up on Base, right? Because Coinbase partners with one of these banks and then it bridges them across, and and people can use it on base and then bridge it to L1 Ethereum and do all that good stuff there. But even if it's launched on L2, it's still settling to Ethereum because the L2 settled to Ethereum layer 1. So it's still the same kind of thing in the end as well. So as I said, like that's the biggest takeaway from these sorts of things. And I hope that more and more of these TradFi institutions get on board with this. There's been other institutions that weren't banks, like Visa, for example, getting on board with this and doing a bunch of stuff on Ethereum mainnet. So it's very, very cool to see more of them get involved here. But you can check out the announcement blog post for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, speaking of stablecoins, Amin here has announced that something called High, which is a multi-collateral RAI fork on Optimism, which is coming soon. So you can read the announcement post here on the Reflex of Finance governance forum, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. But basically, the TLDR of what High is that it is a multi-collateral fork of the existing RAI. It is not pegged to an arbitrary value like $3.14. It is going to be priced at $1 US. The collateral types will include ETH, RAI, LSDs like ST-ETH and RETH, and assets on Optimism like OP and Uni with room for expansion. It got more expected long-term governance than RAI to add remove collateral. It's got a PI controller to set redemption rate, same as RAI. So this is cool. This addresses a lot of my concerns with the original iteration of RAI here, but at the same time, it kind of compromises on the original vision of RAI. RAI wanted to be like a fully decentralized stablecoin in the vein of single collateral DAI, where it only had ETH as collateral. It had basically no governance, and it wasn't necessarily pegged to $1 US. It had like a floating peg based on this this PI controller model that they built in. Now, with this High kind of model, it looks like multi-collateral DAI, where you have multiple collateral types because you need those in order to scale. You're no longer pegging to an arbitrary value. You're kind of like pricing or pegging to $1 US like other stablecoins, and you have more governance involved to add and remove collateral. So it kind of like it gets very blurry now between multi-collateral DAI and High. Now, High may want to avoid adding centralized collateral types. Maybe they just use the decentralized ones. But the thing is that they've already said here that they're going to be using ST-ETH, which is a centralized collateral type because it is part of Lido, which is a centralized staking operator, at least right now. Maybe in the future, Lido can decentralize to a point where people actually believe that they're decentralized and incredibly decentralized, but right now they're centralized. So maybe ST doesn't get added until they're decentralized. I don't know. But other assets, like OP and Uni, they have very concentrated token supplies as well. I mean, yes, okay, they may be part of decentralized projects or projects that want to be decentralized. Obviously, the Optimism network isn't decentralized right now, but the Uniswap protocol is. But the Uni token holders are very centralized, right? Very, very concentrated. So you kind of get all these questions around this, and this is exactly why people have criticized multi-collateral DAI as well, is because the quality of the collateral makes the stablecoin. It makes it makes not just the stability of the stablecoin, but the safety of it as well. And I'm just very curious to see how High is going to handle this. And on top of that, even though DAI went multi-collateral, it has still not been able to scale as much as the centralized stablecoins, and it's still had a host of its own issues, especially around governance and around the fact that a lot of DAI is backed up by USDC, another centralized stablecoin, right? So when you look at it all together, you arrive at the same conclusion that I arrived at a long time ago, where I truly do believe it is impossible to create a truly decentralized stablecoin that is stable and scalable at the same time as being decentralized, and obviously pegged to a currency like the US dollar. I don't believe it's possible to do that. You can create one that's small and that's decentralized, but then it's not scalable, right? It may be stable as well, but it's not scalable, so it's not really going to service anyone. And then, as I've explained before, if you were to create one that's just backed by ETH, you need ETH to be worth so much, right? If it's over collateralized, you need ETH as an asset to be worth so much for it to make sense for your stablecoin to be able to service the world, right? If you wanted to create but then at that point, why would you even be pegging yourself to US dollars to begin with? And then you get back to the logical conclusion of, well, let's just use ETH as our money if ETH gets big enough to be able to, if ETH gets to $100 trillion market cap one day, you would be using ETH as money at that point. You wouldn't be saying, oh, let's use ETH as collateral to create a US dollar stablecoin. No, if ETH gets to $100 trillion in value, it's safe to say that the US dollar probably isn't very strong anymore. Like if we're measuring against the US dollar, right? So in that world, you would just use ETH as your money. You would use ETH as your quote unquote stable coin, right? And then things would be priced in ETH. And I've talked about this before about how when you start pricing things in different currencies, you see how stability is actually an illusion, because your US dollars is not stable to your power bill. If your power bill goes up 10% in a year, right, and the US dollar inflation, is only 2%, it's not as high as it's been traditionally. Maybe it's at that 2 to 3%, right? You could say that your US dollars wasn't very stable against your power bill, right? It actually lost a lot of purchasing power against that. And it's not just your power bill; it's everything basically. Everything that gets more kind of like expensive over time, which are basically the necessities like your power bill, your groceries, your rent, and things like that, right? Your US dollar stability is an illusion. And even things that get cheaper over time, it's still an illusion, just the other way around. So when you start pricing things in ETH, then you measure their value, moving value against ETH, right? And then you could say that, okay, ETH is stable because 1 ETH equals 1 ETH, but price it against your energy bill, maybe it costs 10% more or 10% less from year to year, and then you wouldn't say that ETH is stable to that. You would say it's stable to itself. So the illusion of stability is something that I don't think many people think about, because it's abstracted away completely from us in our everyday lives, because it happens over the longer term. It's not like your energy bill increases 10% overnight most of the time, right? Whereas the value of ETH can fall 10% against US dollars overnight, or could go up 10% against US dollars overnight. So when talking about stability, you have to talk about it in the frame of goods and services, not just against itself. Because everything's stable against itself. 1 ETH equals 1 ETH. 1 USD equals 1 USD, right? Unless it's programmed to not do that, and it's got like an inbuilt burn mechanism or something. But like not in the normal case I'm talking about. But yeah, anyway, you can go check out Hive for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, Matcha is beta testing their new version here, and it's coming soon. So if you are interested in participating in the beta test, you can now join the waitlist. Just wanted to highlight this for you guys. I'll link the waitlist in the YouTube description below. But Matcha is still one of my favorite decentralized exchange aggregators out there. From a UI UX perspective, it's probably got the best UI UX out of all the DEX aggregators out there right now. So yeah, I'm curious to see what they've got cooking in their new version here, and you can join the waitlist to find out what that is. All right, last up here is a tweet from tycoon.eth, where he said, when your Ethereum validator gets chosen to build a block, you gotta step back and appreciate one of the greatest miracles of open source coordination and collaboration. For 12 seconds, your tiny machine in your bedroom is responsible for carrying on a network worth billions of dollars. This is really the true power of being a solo staker here, a home staker. You get to basically be part of this huge multi-billion dollar, 100, 200, $300 billion network that is securing trillions of dollars of value each year and processing trillions of dollars of value each year. And you get to participate in the consensus of that network as well. Not just proposing blocks, but you get to attest to blocks. You get to be part of sync committees. You get to share in execution layer rewards once you propose a block, as well as the consensus layer rewards. And you get to do it while holding on to the asset that is at the heart of that ecosystem. And you get to do it from your home using any hardware you want. I actually had a project idea recently. I want to run an Ethereum validator on one of those little pocket emulator devices that you can buy now that emulates like old Game Boy games and things like that, because those things a lot of the time run like a Raspberry Pi. And as I've told you guys before, you can run an Ethereum validator on a Raspberry Pi with a full node, and it'll run just fine. The only concern would be making it fit in something. Like, how cool would it be to be able to get like a Game Boy Advance shell, stuff a Raspberry Pi in there with a 2 terabyte SSD and run a validator off of it, and then have like the terminal on the Game Boy Advance screen. And then when people come over, it's like a showpiece. You can be like, hey, here's my Ethereum validator. Like, I don't know. And I just think something like that would be really cool. It might be a project that I look into, because I've actually been looking into a lot of that stuff recently, because I love that sorts of stuff. But yeah, just something that I was thinking about as well. But Tycoon's tweet here is just great. I think it very much encapsulates exactly the power that home stakers have here and the power that the Ethereum network has given home stakers. Because to propose a block on proof of work networks, especially the huge ones like Bitcoin, as a solo miner is very, very hard, right? And you're not guaranteed to propose a block for a very, very long time. Whereas on Ethereum, one validator can actually propose a block every 4 months right now, and you have relative certainty. It's a percentage based thing, but you have relative certainty that you are going to propose a block at some point, and you get to share in those rewards for doing so. But anyway, on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Oh, not tomorrow. Tomorrow's the weekend. Next week. Thanks, everyone.